Welcome back to our series on the Interactive Broker API. So we are discussing at this point more of just how to use the API library. So not really how to build it or anything like that, because I know some people, they're just more concerned about, hey, how do I use the thing? That's really all I care about. So that's what this series is covering. In our previous video, we talked about running the server, understanding the authentication process. So understanding that depending on which account you need to use, you need to make sure that you're consistent with the information you're providing me and the information that you're providing the login portal. So it's very important that those two match. Additionally, we did talk a little bit about endpoints, how certain endpoints need to be called before other endpoints, and they will cause you an issue if you don't do that. But I am trying to work on some techniques that we can use to help mitigate some of that issue and make it just nicer to work with, right? So now what we're going to do in this video is we are going to talk about, excuse me, I'm clearing my throat all the time, but I'm getting over being sick. What we are going to basically be covering is how to get more of the data endpoints. So these are endpoints that, at least from what I can tell, there are no requirements where it comes to what you need to call before, at least. But these are ones that definitely provide some data. But I do want to talk about something before we get started. If you haven't already, you probably see me posting a lot about some revamps that are coming to the channel in the form of just organizing content, just putting content links to make sure they're all updated. So I did want to give a quick update regarding that. It's actually going very well. So this has actually been a very interesting, what is the word? I don't even know what to think. My mind's blanking. Process for me. I'll just call it process for right now. So basically, like what I've been doing is I've been seeing how to interact with the YouTube API and the Facebook API to help manage the content that currently is on my channel, because it's changed a lot, right? Definitely was not the same channel it was when I first started it. And so part of that is if I can get this all in a good spot, then I can focus more on making the content, which I like doing. Writing video descriptions is not exactly the most exciting part about doing this. It's definitely writing the code, and trust me, updating links is also not one of the most exciting topics. But I also understand that there are an important important component of all the content, so they do need to be in a good spot. So I basically just been writing automation stuff to help manage the channel, and now I have like my massive database of, it's not massive, it's like only a couple hundred rows of just information related to my videos, tags, like how I tag it, descriptions, all the files that are associated, and resources, so all the links that I provide, and stuff like that. And then there's also like my little description template that I use to basically automate the whole process of building descriptions that go into the videos. So I've actually had a lot of fun with this. I didn't think I would, and I've actually enjoyed it, and I spent a little bit too much time on it, more than I wanted to, but it's neat because now if you go to the channel, you should see things in a much more consistent fashion. So not that one. Videos, there it is. So if you go to it now, like you'll see things should be in a much more consistent fashion. There's now related topics, what is it? Resources, descriptions, all that stuff. So it's definitely come a long way. There's still some more work to do in the form of, just playlist, but I just need to do a little bit more organization on that. So I did want to give a quick update on that just because I think that's definitely come a long way since it first started, but it's been an interesting learning process. Didn't think it would be that exciting, but it turned into a very exciting project. All right, back to data endpoints. So we've talked about the accounts. That's part of it. Let's talk about the data ones. So just to make sure we're not printing out way too much, let's talk about some of our data ones. So let's talk about prices. Everybody loves prices. So the Interactive Broker API does allow you to get real-time quotes and historical quotes. Now, To get historical quotes, the documentation is a little bit misleading. They give you the impression that you can only go down to 5 minutes. You can actually go down to 1 minute. So from what I've been able to tell, if I, where is it? 2 hours, there it is. So if I put this to 2 hours in 1 minute, it will actually give me minute level data. Now, to get historical data from the API client perspective, it's market data history. This particular endpoint does require a few arguments. Some are optional, some are required. So, actually, no, I think these are the ones where all are required. Yeah. So this one, the first one is contract ID. So Interactive Broker doesn't usually do symbols. They do something called a contract ID, because for a symbol, the way they look at it is there can be multiple instruments that belong to that symbol. So for example, Apple can have futures, they can have options, they can have equities, all sorts of different things. And so they use a unique contract ID that's associated with that particular financial instrument. So depending on the instrument that you want, you need to give a particular contract ID. So for the market data history, I provide a contract ID. I specify the period as a string. The period is basically how far back do you want to look? So how far back do you want to look from the current point in time? And at what level of detail do you want that information? Do you want it at 1 minute? Do you want it at 5 minutes? Do you want it like at 1 week? So on and so on. So period specifies how far back am I looking, or what time frame am I looking? And bar defines how evenly sliced do I want that time frame. Now, if you go to the actual, the API documentation, you'll see market data and market data history. So again, for this one, it's a little bit misleading. They say 5 minutes, 1 hour, 1 week, but technically you can go down a little bit further. I just don't know if they haven't updated it or what, but this is actually not correct. You can actually go down lower. Now, that's market data. Market data history. There are also real-time quotes. Real-time quotes, a little bit tricky to say the least. And this one will cause you headaches depending on when you call it. So market data. Market data represents the real-time quotes. By default, you will get back a bid, an ask, a last, a change percentage, close, and listing exchange. So if you just give me a contract ID, you will get those pieces of information back by default. But you can actually get more. So if you want more pieces of information, right now you have to pass through a numeric field, identifier. I am in the process of changing this. So in time, we will actually be able to do it with more descriptive fields, not just a number. But if you want to know what field is associated with which number, you just expand this return an array of objects, and you'll see the field number and what exactly is supposed to be represented by that field. So in this case, field 31 returns the last price. Field 55 returns the symbol. And if you keep scrolling, you will see there are a lot of fields. Now, here's the thing about this one. I can't necessarily explain it, and I'm trying to better understand why it happens. But if you pass through certain fields at certain times of the day, the API freaks out, at least from what I can see. It doesn't freak out. It will still send information back, but it won't be consistent. So I will warn you, I'm going to close this out. I will warn you, when you use this endpoint, you might want to build some logic into your script just to validate that what you got back was what you actually asked for, because sometimes if you're calling it at certain times of the day, you won't actually get all the pieces of information back. So again, just kind of keep that in mind. Additionally, there is one final argument you can pass through called since. It is a number, and all it represents is the time period since which updates are required. So use Epcot time with milliseconds. Basically, this one is more about just update frequency. I personally haven't used it that much, but it's available if you want it. So let's run these two endpoints and see what we get back. We should get back a lot. Okay. Great. See what happened? Definitely asked for more. Didn't get them all back. It's because it's after market hours and I don't get them back after market hours. However, with our historical data, we didn't have an issue. So this again is to validate to you that yes, I did pass through 1 minute and I still got back 1 minute. So the documentation lies. But this is also to validate another point for you, which is, guess what? Even though you asked for it, you might not get it back. So you will have to build in some logic sometimes that will actually test it to get back. Now, what I have seen before is sometimes you do have to call the endpoint twice. Again, this kind of goes back to, this does go back to calling certain endpoints first. I don't know. It seems to be erratic sometimes. Sometimes I don't have to, other times I don't. I think more than likely what I'm probably just going to do is behind the scenes, I'll just call it twice because I don't want you guys to be getting back information when it's not. I don't know exactly what that's going to look like from a server perspective. It might be something where I just have to call it once during a session and then I'll be good. If that is the case, I'll be very happy. Otherwise, there might be some additional modifications. But hopefully now you can kind of see that, hey, we actually got it back. We just didn't, we had to call it a second time. So that's all I'm going to just kind of give you on that component is don't be surprised if some of these endpoints don't exactly work as intended initially. I don't know if it's interactive broker that kind of has to change. I don't know if it's something I'm doing, but it is one of those kind of weird things. Okay, so that's talking about historical prices and current prices. There are some other ones. Where is the other one? Oh, yeah. Oh, Lord. There's a funny story with this one. I think it's great. There's no documentation on any of these, but they work. So we're using them. For whatever reason, there's like a bunch of endpoints and I still don't even know them all. I still have to go through all of these ones because there's endpoints that are specific to mutual funds. There are endpoints that are specific to futures, to options. I mean, I don't even know really where to begin because I just cannot believe there's this many endpoints that they don't have documented, but they work. I mean, they haven't returned an error and it doesn't seem like the server gets mad when I call them. But, just to kind of give you an idea, I mean, when it comes to the TD Ameritrade API, I mean, right now, Interactive Brokers is crushing them and crushing them by a long shot because it is a ton. So for example, if I want just if I want summary data, I can get summary data apparently for like fundamentals. Who would have guessed? Additionally, there are some news, so you can actually get news endpoints, so you can get all the articles for a particular, topic if you're interested in it. And it's crazy. And then the weird thing is like there's more endpoints beyond this one because this one doesn't give you the link. There's another endpoint that will give you the link. It's insane. And then I think this was like a little bit of everything. So this is kind of like, I don't know what they call like the summary page, if that's like what you want to talk about. So they have total revenue. They'll have it trended. They'll have cost of revenue, net income, net profit margin, cash flow. They'll have ownership details. They'll have, what is this? Top 3 owners. They'll have analyst forecast, when they came out, what the actual was, what the format. I mean, it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. They have ESG ratings, key ratios. So if you want certain key ratios, apparently they seem to be available. They have competitors. They have analyst ratings. Where is it? Let me put this one up. They have events. They have dividends. And that's pretty much it. But basically, you won't find this stuff in the actual documentation, but they're there. I mean, they work, or for whatever reason. So I've been building the functionality into the client because, again, I haven't seen it not work. So I'm like, well, I'll just build it in, see what they say. So let's start walking through some of the financials, the fundamental data. So when it comes to fundamental data, unfortunately, it's just kind of one of those things. I might change it depending on as I find out more information, experiment. But right now you can get income statement, balance sheets, and cash flow. So you can also get those financial statements at a certain period level. So you can specify whether you want quarterly or you want annual. To basically call this information, it would just be basically IB client, fundamentals, and then you'd go down to financials. You're going to put in a couple arguments. The first one is going to be the contract ID. Well, that's just the contract ID that we want to use. In this case, if I want Apple, it's 265598. I am experimenting to see if a list of contract IDs would work, but right now I haven't had time to look at that. Additionally, you need to specify your financial statement. Your financial statement can be one of 3 values. It's income, balance, or cash. So if I want the cash flow, it would be cash. If I want the income statement, it would be income. And if I want the balance sheet, it would be balance. Additionally, you can specify the period at which these particular financial statements are returned. There are 2 options. There is annual and there is quarterly. If you want annual, you would type period, and then you would pass through the string annual. If you want quarterly, it would be quarter, and just like that. Now, right now, what I'll do is I'll just run these 2, and then we'll go on to the next ones. So here, income statement, here, balance sheet. This one is annually, this one is quarterly. Let's see what we get back. Who's texting me? No. Did it freeze up on me? It might have froze up on me. It does that sometimes. Let's just run it again. It's like this one. I have to technically check too to see if like I have to call one before the other one. Sometimes you have to do that. Okay, perfect. So it looked like it ran fine. As you can tell, the total revenue did come back, so that's great. Yeah, they have the previous day, date, all that fun stuff, and then they also have the income statement as well. So if you want like more of a, what do they actually look like? Here's another one. This is normally what you would get back. So in this case, I am doing the income statement quarterly. So you can see total revenue, gross profit, and then they have table, columns, and then so on and so on. Again, a treasure trove of information. It's pretty freaking remarkable, not gonna lie. Okay, so now that we've done that, let's keep going on and talking about some other endpoints. What are some other endpoints? Well, let's keep going. They're all more related to financial data. So, for example, if you want key ratios that are associated with Apple, you can get them using the fundamentals key ratios endpoint. Each one of these endpoints is pretty much identical. It's still going to be passing through a contract ID, and that contract ID does need to be a string for the time being. So fundamentals key ratios returns all the key ratios for that particular component. We We have dividends, that returns all the dividends. And then ESG is environmental, social, and governance score. So that's been pretty good so far. From these ones, you can just run them again as is. It might be a little bit messy, but we'll look into the actual web page and see what we get. Okay. Okay, key ratios, that looks good. We got some dividends, that looks good. Great, and we got some ESG, that looks good. Where did I put these ones? Dividends, ESG. Let's look at the dividends. Dividends is pretty straightforward. It's not a ton of information. What? No dividend date. Oh, no dividend text. I was like, no, that's wrong. They definitely should have dividends. I'm curious this one matches up with this one. Oh, yeah, it's a little bit different. Yeah, it is a little bit different. ESG. So that's pretty good too. And they also have like, so this is like kind of the thing too, is they actually have like download links. So you can actually get like the ESG scores like as PDFs. So I'll let you decide how you want to use that. All right. So we've talked about those guys. So those are a couple other ones. We have dividends, ratios, ESGs. Where's the key ratio one? Did I not have it? This might be it. I can't honestly remember. This one's like, it's called persist. I honestly don't know exactly what's all in it, but I know it has, I think it's like more, you know, ratios and stuff, but you know, you can kind of explore too and see what you find. So now we're going to talk about a few other endpoints, and then I'm going to call it for tonight because my voice is starting to go again. So I'm going to copy these ones, and then I'm going to put them down here. All right. Whew. Excuse me. All right, so we got to search for a symbol. So a lot of us get a ticker symbol. We don't get necessarily a contract ID. So if you want to be able to search for particular symbol's contract ID, all you're going to do is you're going to call the symbol search endpoint. And with this particular endpoint, as of right now, it's just a symbol that you pass through, which is just a string value of that symbol. They do need to be uppercase, FYI. But with this one, you actually can get back locked sometimes depending on the particular symbol that you're searching. In some cases, you can actually get, yeah, like Apple has a ton, a ton. Most of them, though, are related to options. So they have warrants too. Trying to think what else. I think that's it for Apple. Yeah, but basically with this one, it gives you everything. The contract ID is usually just the first element inside the list of dictionaries. So you just want to keep that an eye out when you're starting to run it. All right, so that's the symbols one. Let's talk about news. So these ones are actually a little bit different. It's a tiny bit different. Where did I put my data ones? Data endpoints. So they're still using the other ones, but what I'm doing is instead of calling all of them, I'm calling like a subset of them. So with symbols, or sorry, not symbols, with the news endpoint, it's still making a call to the kind of like that landing page endpoint, or sorry, the fundamentals endpoint, but I'm only making a request for that particular item. So in this case, all you would want to do is do IB client. In this case, I'm going to do data underscore news endpoint. It's still the contract ID, and it's still going to be a string. So you just right click, run that Python file, and hopefully everyone's happy, right? Okay, perfect. So this one gives you the news for that particular one. I think this one's a little bit interesting because they'll also give you a sentiment sometimes. So they'll actually give you a sentiment, whether it's hot or not. So like a hot topic and stuff like that, and things along that nature. And then additionally, They also have analyst ratings. They have ownership details, competitor details, and then analyst forecast, all that kind of fun stuff. Each one of these endpoints is really just preceded by data underscore and then ratings. So in this case, ownership, and then data underscore, data competitors, data analyst forecast. And again, everything's literally identical. It's still the contract ID, and it still needs to be passed through as a string. So now, if you run it, we should get a ton of data back. Like a ton. Ownership, competitors, and then we also got analyst forecast. Now, there's a few extra things I do want to mention before I close out everything. Yes, I know what I was going to mention. So there's certain endpoints, from what I can tell, that are different than the actual interactive broker API. So for whatever reason, if you call the widgets.tipranks.com API IB, it returns also news data. It's kind of interesting though, because I don't think this is part of it. I think it's a separate one. But with this one, I think they have an API account, I would imagine, but you can see that this actually returns more data sometimes. So for example, you'll get sentiment scores, you'll get the dates of that particular article, the title, and then also you'll get a link to that particular article. So it will redirect you. So I thought this was crazy. I thought it was so neat because, you're looking at all these news articles and they got sentiment and stuff like that. So it's pretty cool when you think about it, just like all the potential information that's kind of available. And then they have prices as well too. You can also get analyst ratings. There's a lot of analyst ratings. Good Lord, there's a lot of analyst ratings. And then you can see how they're trending. So I think that's kind of interesting too. I think the hedge funds one doesn't work. I can't remember. Yeah, that one doesn't work. And then there is the analyst. Oh no, that's it. I think I did that other one. I'm not sure if I'm going to integrate these ones into the client yet, just because I don't know how reliable they are. But yeah, so there's just a lot of endpoints, and I was really hoping Interactive Broker was going to be more up to date than TD Ameritrade, but that does not seem to be the case because there are apparently all these endpoints that they don't have any documentation for, but they still work. So not really sure why that's the case. But yeah, I think at this point, I've kind of done enough on the data endpoint. So if you have any questions, by all means, put them down in the comments below, and I will do my best to get back to them. Just keep in mind, if they're kind of about endpoints that there's not a lot of documentation on, I might not necessarily have an answer for you just because I'm kind of in the dark like you are. So just keep that in mind. Other than that, I think related to interactive brokers, we're going to next couple videos, we'll start building some more. And then additionally, we will revisit some of this topic as well too. And then eventually I will start up the Excel add-in as well. So there is some content coming. At least I'm feeling better a little bit, so I can at least talk through an entire video without entirely losing my voice, but it's definitely starting to lapse a little bit. So thank you again for watching, everybody. We will see you in the next video.